Hi, it's Dorothy Tannahill-Moran, certified sound therapist. Are you one of these people that believes that listening to a high frequency is in your best interest? Or maybe that listening to high frequencies is the best type of frequency? Think again. That's actually a myth, and I'm going to prove to you that it is a myth. Now, I'm not real clear where that myth came from, but I've got my guesses. And here's what my guess is. We talk a lot about raising your vibration, and I think a lot of times people also use vibration and frequency in kind of the same context. But frequency and vibration are very different things. And they're very different things in terms of talking about our consciousness, which is what raising our vibration is about, versus frequency, which is something else having to do with our body, the earth, the environment. So let's look for just a second at some low frequency examples as I start dispelling this myth about high frequency goodness and high frequency myth for you. First is Schumann's frequency or Schumann's resonance. Now, this is also fondly known as a heartbeat of the earth. It's 7.83 hertz, definitely low, definitely below our audible range, which starts roughly at about 20 hertz. This is the environment of the earth. Now, this particular frequency has been changing and has changed over the last decade, and it has increased, but still it's very much below audible range, making it, if you will, a very low frequency. A second low frequency fact is the earth itself has a hum. It has its own frequency, and that frequency is so low that it's a bunch of zeros and then a one. So in other words, it does have a frequency, but it's incredibly low. Third is our body. We all have a frequency, and each one of our organs and systems within our body have a different frequency. But the sum total of all of those frequencies makes us in total have a frequency, and that frequency roughly is about 5 hertz. Again, we can't hear it, and it is below audible range. It's a low frequency. I hope you're starting to get my drift here as I slide into the fourth example. Fourth example has to do with pulse electromagnetic field therapy. This was developed years ago by NASA scientists because they noticed that as the astronauts left the influence of the frequencies of the Earth, that they started getting sick. And that was the reason, because our connection to the Earth frequency keeps us healthy. And disconnecting from it, as the astronauts were causing them to become unhealthy. So PEMF, pulse electromagnetic field, was developed so it could be put into their suits to keep them healthy as they traveled through outer space. That now has been translated into various and sundry therapy devices that we can bring into our homes and use for ourselves. The frequency of PEMF does vary, but roughly is around 18 hertz. Again, it's below our audible range and is what you would call low by, I'll just say, the standards of people that are proponents of high frequency. Now, those 4 examples, and trust me, I could keep citing other examples, but those 4 examples are great examples of where low frequencies are relevant to our health. And that's the key point here, is low frequencies are good for us. The Earth's frequency, the Schumann's frequency of the environment, our body, all of those kinds of things. If we were to suddenly shift our frequency, our body's frequency, to something higher, it would be very disruptive. We would be out of balance and start going into a disease state. Now, let's shift gears for a second and look at some experts on sound therapy science, which is John Michael Stewart. He has tested in his laboratory the effects of various kinds of sound in sound therapy. And what he has concluded is that some of the lower frequencies, in fact, have a more positive influence and impact on things like human blood and various fluids. So, if you will, you could look at some of his testing of sound and sound therapy and almost conclude, well, maybe even low frequencies are better. But in fact, other frequencies that are higher also have great benefit, as he has continued to test in a number of different ways. I just bring that up because I want you to understand that some things have also been tested. Now, in my practice as a certified sound therapist, I used what's called planetary frequencies. And planetary frequencies are Tibetan singing bowls that have been tested and certified. And knowing what the specific frequency is of the bowl, it allows me to understand what the effect is going to be on the mind and the body. The frequencies that I use range between 125 hertz and 250 hertz, each one of them having a specific effect on the mind and body, all of those increments in between those two. Again, that is considered low by the standards of people who are proponents of high frequency. And by the way, just so we're on the same page, proponents of high frequency generally are talking 700 to 800 hertz, all the way up to 10,000 hertz. Now, let me give you an example of one of the planetary frequencies that I use. It's 184 hertz, again, much lower than the high frequency proponents. And that particular frequency will have a wonderful effect on anybody who's experiencing hip and lower back discomfort. It will help to reduce or eliminate the pain that they may be experiencing. Now, it's not the only thing that particular frequency will deal with, but it's one of the most significant ones, and it's one that I use the most frequently. So there you go. You've got a couple of different examples of frequency that is much lower than what the high frequency proponents are. Now that gets you to another question. Are you saying that low frequencies are better than high frequencies? No, that's not what I'm saying either, even though John Michael Stewart is suggesting on some tests that the lower frequencies do have a benefit. What I am saying is high frequency is just that. It's high. It's not necessarily better. It's not necessarily better than low. So low or high, what I am suggesting is be a good consumer. Don't buy into the myth that just because it's a high frequency, it's going to have tremendous benefit on you, because it's not going to have more benefit on you than lower frequencies. Because keep in mind, the earth has tremendous benefit to you. You can't hear it, and it's an incredibly low frequency. Other frequencies, like I mentioned, that I use between 125 and 250 also have tremendous benefit to you. Now, we can look at Western medicine using ultrasound, which is super high frequency, and look at those benefits for imaging and tissue regeneration and physical therapy. But again, that's not what proponents of high frequency are talking about, because The ultrasound is so high, you can't hear it. We're talking about high frequencies that people can actually hear. So let's summarize this. No, it is a myth. High frequencies are just high. They're not any better than low, nor is low any better than high. Yes, it is possible for you to listen to things that aren't in your best interests. I won't get into that right now, but I just want you to be a good, smart consumer of frequency and sound. So with that, I've got a couple more things to wrap up with here. Subscribe to this channel because I like to be able to share my wisdom on sound and planetary frequencies, but also understand that all of my guided meditations and my sound paths all use planetary frequencies. Each and every one of them is going to be good for you for body and mind. Also consider subscribing to my website or going to my website, www.aras.com. There, I've got a ton more sound resources, sound bath meditations of all sorts and kinds, dealing with all sorts of issues of both body and mind. And so with that, be a great consumer. Listen to things that bring joy to your heart and to your body. Take care.